Welcome to the next episode of the Porsche Top 5 series. Today, we'll travel through time with one of the most successful drivers of his era to present you the most iconic motorsport models.
Hello everyone, my name's Derek Bell, and I'm really fortunate enough today to be here to present to you Porsche Motorsport's most iconic 5 cars. We're going to begin here today with this one, car number 5. So here we are in the 90s, and during the early 90s, Porsche hadn't really had any success as far as outright victories at Le Mans were concerned. So in 1995, they decided it was time to build a special car to try and win that race yet again. I mean, just look at this car, look at the aerodynamics on it. The whole car would balance better in the corners, and of course, aerodynamically, it made the body flow a lot better because it was longer and more sleek. Look at that beautiful rear wing and that clean air. The car was a 3.2-litre, twin turbo, twin camshaft, 4 valves per cylinder. The whole of this car was actually made of carbon fiber. They manufactured 21 of these cars during the short period they were out, and of course they won the Le Mans in 1998. Welcome to the 60s, and this is the Porsche 904, commonly known as the Carrera GTS. 100 models were built to allow them to go into racing, which of course they did with a fervor, as always. What a stunning car. This little car here actually marked the beginning of a new era of Porsche motoring. This actual car was the personal car of Ferdinand Alexander Porsche. There were quite a lot of firsts with this actual car. It was the first time the word GTS ever appeared on a Porsche. It was also the first time that GFK was used, glass fiber construction. Porsche combined that with a steel chassis, and that made it very strong and of course very light at the same time. Well, look at this little package in here. Obviously, the 6-cylinder engine, 180 horsepower, pushing around about 150, 160 miles an hour. Everything is so lightweight, but yet so strong, and it's obviously so durable. Well, welcome to the 1970s. This is probably the greatest car that ever existed in sports car racing. It set new standards for Porsche worldwide, the Porsche 917. This actual car went on to win Le Mans for the very first time, the very first victory that Porsche ever had in the famous 24 Hours of Le Mans. Well, words almost fail me to talk about a car that meant so much to so many drivers. In my case, that was the story of my life, really, was that car. It made my racing career. The 917, 4.9 litres, flat 12 air-cooled engine, nearly 500 horsepower, 800 kilograms. And at Mulsanne, going down that famous 6-kilometre straight, this car would do 340 kilometres. Very, very fast indeed, but the car was so stable. I remember vividly being at Le Mans after training, and Norbert Singer said to me, "So how many revs were you pulling on the Mulsanne straight?" And I said, 8,100. He said, "Oh, that is good, because at 8,200 she blows up." And that's when I really got a good idea of how close the Germans took it to the limit. 25 cars were actually built in the first place. This, believe it or not, is chassis number 1. What a magnificent car. And now, it's the electrifying 80s. This is our number 2, but in my book, it's my number 1. Well, here's our office. On the way to work, every day we race this car. But what we must remember is that I think the outstanding part of the 956 and the 962 was ground effect. And that really means it sucks the air underneath the car out quicker. And as the air's coming out of the back, quicker than it is over the top, it sucks it down on the road. Turbos need a lot of cooling, and I'm sitting right here on the intake for the actual intercoolers, and there are your 2 exhausts. And when we backed off the throttle or were downshifting into a corner from, let's say, 200 miles an hour, the flames would actually come leaping out of there. It was a fantastic sight. We had an engine that was 3.2 litres and, in fact, had twin turbos and produced something like nearly 800 horsepower in qualifying. All round, it was the most astonishing car, and I think one that none of us will ever forget. This is the beginning. The very beginning of Porsche Motorsport in the 1950s. And this is the car that really started it all, the 550 Spider. Beautiful, hand-constructed car. Aluminium over a very, very fine tubular chassis. A very small engine, very agile, very easy to drive, but the beginning of Porsche Motorsport. Talking about simplicity, look at that dashboard, how simple, there's nothing on it. I mean, just two switches and a couple of dials, absolutely amazing. So here we are now, with another bit of simplicity, and you look at it and go, what is all the fuss about? Air-cooled, 1.5 litres, 110 horsepower, obviously little four-cylinder engine. Absolutely magnificent, reliable, and we know that because it went out and did so well in those early races. When I look at this car, it doesn't strike me necessarily as being beautiful, but it does strike me as having this most beautiful, simple line all the way through. I mean, a straight line coming through, there's no big curves in it, it just flows beautifully. And we come to the rear wheel, and there's a slight raising there. They could have kept the body level here and gone down at the back, but they didn't. They put this haunch in it. And that line there is just so typically Porsche. I mean, look at the beauty of it. It's very simple, it's just simplistic. In that year, 1954, it competed in the Carrera Panamericana. Not only did it finish third overall, but it actually won its class. And I'm sure they could never imagine the future that Porsche was going to have in motorsport. So that concludes our trip into Porsche's iconic top 5 cars. I hope you enjoyed it. We've had a great time. Thank you, girls, for everything you've done. And as they say, all good things must come to an end.
And for next week, zip up your jackets and take a second pair of wool socks. We will climb up the famous Großglockner in Austria to talk about featherweight Porsche models.